We're here on Capitol Hill, where police chiefs have gathered to find solutions to the rising crime and homicides happening around the country.
On average, homicides have increased nearly 20% this year. In 62% of the cities, we had increases in non-fatal shootings as well. Almost half report an increase in gang-related activity and retaliatory violence.
To combat spiking crime rates, the chiefs proposed harsher sentences for repeat offenders, tougher gun enforcement, and federal intervention on the local level, and to focus on new synthetic drugs like synthetic marijuana or K2. So I questioned the head of the Police Chiefs Association about why there was no mention of the failed policies of the war on drugs. He gave me a very vague answer.
So there was a discussion of the criminal justice system and changing some of the tactics that have caused rifts between communities and law enforcement over the past few decades. What wasn't mentioned was the war on drugs. And there's a growing number of current and former law enforcement officials that say you can't really end this cycle of violence and crime without first ending the war on drugs. What's your response to that?
What we know is that there are folks that are robbing banks, that are committing other crimes to support a drug habit. What we know is that there are drug wars going on between gangs that are trying to control the drug trade. So I think that for us to throw up our hands and say, well, gee whiz, the war on drugs hasn't worked, would be irresponsible.
I think it's irresponsible to keep progressing down a path that's not working.
Not all police chiefs agree with Manger. Among those is Larry Kirk, police chief of Old Monroe, Missouri, and a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, a group of 5,000 current and former law enforcement officials who are calling for an end to the drug war.
The demand for drugs has not dropped. The importation of drugs in this country has not dropped. There's nothing about that has worked at all.
Incarcerating folks that are addicted to narcotics is not the best solution. But I don't think you can ignore the criminal enterprises that are selling these narcotics, that are looting pharmacies.
And whenever you talk about, sitting there saying, well, there's people who are still robbing banks and robbing stores to go after their drug habit. Yes, of course, because we're not stopping the actual demand for drugs. But at the same time, is that we're still treating people who are drug addicts as criminals, and we're still not addressing the mental health aspects of it.
Well, I think that you've seen communities throughout our nation, one by one, decriminalize, legalize certain drugs. And I think that the jury is still out on how effective those strategies will be.
You have all that money now that comes into sales tax that was going into the pockets of drug dealers, back to street gangs, back to cartels. That's money now that's going back into communities. That's money that can be going back into mental health services. That can be going back into education. So I think that's just grossly negligent on our part to keep trying to say, well, there's illegal drug sales, so it doesn't help to try to regulate an aspect of it. And it is working. It's working in Washington. It's working in Colorado. It's working in Alaska and Oregon. And to say it's not is just holding on to a pipe dream.
At the conference, officials told us there had been no discussion of ending the war on drugs.
No. Of course it's not on the table because it's feeding a revenue-generating police department and criminal justice system. It's feeding prisons in rural areas that give people jobs.
That's Morgan State's Lawrence Brown. He's examined the national crime wave. He argues without addressing urban poverty in highly segregated communities, we can't expect to deal with the root causes of violence.
Of course there's an interest in stopping it because we've never said let's tackle segregation. We've only been interested in this country and in Baltimore City in maintaining it and in intensifying it. And I think that's the issue that we have to look at.
From Washington, this is Jess Lenore.